Here's something that'll absolutely wreck your modern perspective about growing up in the Tudor era. Picture this. 1 in 4 kids never even made it to their 5th birthday. Half wouldn't survive past age 10. Let that sink in for a second. In your average Tudor classroom, half those bright-eyed children were already marked by mortality. Parents had armies of kids, fully aware many wouldn't live to adulthood. This wasn't some distant tragedy, it was Tuesday. Just another day in 16th century life. Oh, and if you're vibing with these stories, smash that like button or subscribe. Seriously, I'm dying to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment with your location and local time. Blows. My mind imagining people dozing off to this worldwide. All right, buckle up. We're teleporting to Tudor England, 1526. Trust me, it's a ride. But first, get cozy. Fluff those pillows. Yank that blanket up. You'll want to be snug for where we're headed. Congratulations. You've just woken up as 7-year-old Edward Radcliffe, son of minor noble Sir Thomas Radcliffe, a small fish in King Henry VIII's Shark Tank. Forget your cushy modern bedroom, with memory foam and thread count bragging rights. Nope. You're sprawled on a straw-stuffed mattress in the upper chamber of your family's. Manor note. Manor sounds fancy, but think drafty attic. A sliver of dawn sneaks through wooden shutters, the room bone-chilling. No central heating here, just the ghost of last night's fire smoldering in the corner. The wool blankets, scratchy as a barn cat. The linen sheets. Sandpaper with delusions of grandeur. Your nose wrinkles at the room's signature. Scent. Sweet and sour rushes strewn on the floor, mingled with dried lavender and rosemary, the Tudor version of Febreze. Undercut by wood smoke and the earthy musk of aging timber. You're not alone. Your little brothers George V and Henry III are snoring in a trundle bed nearby. The eldest, you rate an actual bed instead of a floor pallet. Downstairs, servants clatter around. They've been up since before dawn. Your father, being nobility, has important business. Your mother's orchestrating the household circus. Knock, knock. The door creaks open. It's Alice, your family's most trusted servant. Clutching a tallow candle that throws haunted house shadows on the walls. Rise and shine, Master Edward, she chirps. Your tutor's waiting. No sleeping in on weekends here. Tudor! Noble kids ran on military precision. Your day. Jam-packed with activities to mold you into a proper adult. You yawn. Shove off the covers. And bam, morning air slaps you like a wet fish. No lazy stretches here. You've got to move to stay. Warm? And about that bed? Lumpy flea motel? Even wealthy households. Battled bedbugs, your uninvited roommates, your prayers, Master Edward. Alice reminds you gently, right before anything before pants, before breakfast. You kneel bedside and mumble morning prayers. Religion wasn't. Just part of Tudor life. It was life. Even kids were expected to nail their prayers recited twice daily without fail. You kneel on icy floorboards, linen nightshirt, doing nothing for insulation, and launch into the Lord's Prayer in Latin. Pater, Noster, Quies, and Silas. Welcome to 1526, Henry VIII hasn't yeeted the Catholic Church. Yet England's still teen pope. Every kid, noble or peasant, memorized these prayers. Toddlerhood. Forgetting them? Not an option. Prayers done, now getting dressed. And oh boy, this isn't grab your favorite hoodie time. Alice helps you into a knee-length linen shirt, aka Tudor underwear, changed weekly if you're lucky. Next, a wool doublet buttons down the front, stiff collar, think itchy blazer. Then come the hose, not tight, separate leg tubes tied. To your doublet with points, aka fancy shoelaces. Getting these on without twisting takes artistry. The russet dye. Flex it screams gentry kid, stand still, Master Edward, Alice scolds, wrestling with laces. Your father won't tolerate sloppiness. Appearances were everything in Tudor England. Even at 7, your outfit broadcasts your social tier modest compared to Earl's offspring. But light years beyond peasant rags. Once you're dressed, Alice brings a freezing wash basin, heating water's a luxury. You splash your face, teeth chattering. No showers here, maybe a full bath monthly. Alice hands you a bone comb for your bowl cut, boys wore it just below the ears. Girls tuck theirs under caps by age 6. Your father awaits in the hall for. Breaking fast, Alice announces. Breakfast wasn't the main event in Tudor times. Many adults skipped it, but noble kids got something. Maybe a manchet loaf fine white bread for the elite with butter and watered-down ale. Yes. Even kids drank weak beer water was sketchy. You pad downstairs, leather shoes tap-tapping. The great hall's all ready. Buzzing servants, setting up trestle tables. Your father's at the high table, reviewing papers, accounts, correspondence. Good morning, father, you say, bowing slightly. Noble kids showed extreme deference. No speaking unless spoken. 2-0 PDA. Edward. He nods. Ready for lessons? Yes, father. Your breakfast arrives. That manchet loaf, a smear of butter, weak ale. As you nibble, your mother sweeps in with your sister Elizabeth 9. Girls' education? Different, while you prep for. University or government? Elizabeth's groomed for marriage and household management. Good morning, mother, you chorus. Edward Master Smithson awaits in the library. Elizabeth, you'll join me for needlework and accounts. Master Smithson equals your tutor, hired to mold you into gentleman 2.0 at 7. You're graduating from mom man chaplain basics to formal studies. You finish eating and head to the library. A glorified closet with a desk and a dozen books handmade and obscenely expensive. Master Smithson, Oxford grad, all business glares. You're late? You're not? We begin with Latin. Latin was the language of church, law, and diplomacy. You'll spend hours conjugating verbs and memorizing grammar. Amo, amos. Amat, you recite. Smithson nods. Continue. Mamas, amates, amant. The morning looms ahead. 3 to 4 hours of Latin, then math, writing, religion. No textbooks you copy onto slate boards or parchment with quills. No weekends either, just Sundays for church. The school day? Dawn to dusk, and discipline. Brutal. That birch rod in the corner isn't decor. Slip up in Latin? Whack. Sloppy. Handwriting? Whack. Daydream? Whack. Focus, Edward Smithson snaps. You jerk your gaze from the window where servant kids haul water. A gentleman masters his mind. You straighten. Us. Master Smithson. Harsh. Maybe, but Tudor childhood wasn't about innocence and play. It was boot camp for adulthood. By 7, you're on the conveyor belt to your future role, managing estates, serving at court, upholding family honor. Your education? Survival kit. Latin, math, writing, hunting, dancing, etiquette. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's curriculum, reading, writing, basic French, lute lessons, needlework. So much needlework. Was version of WebMD. She's being prepped for wife, mom simulator running households, raising kids. By mid-morning, your stomach growls. Breakfast was hours ago. Dinner, the main meal, isn't until 11 a.m. Let us turn to arithmetic, Master Smithson declares, sliding the Latin text aside with the solemnity of a judge passing sentence. A merchant possesses 3 wine barrels, the first 3/4 full, the second half full, the third but a quarter filled. Each barrel holds 20 gallons when brimming. Calculate the merchant's total wine volume. Your brain creaks into motion, mentally wrestling fractions that feel deliberately spiteful. Mathematics in Tudor England wasn't about abstract equations, it was survival math. Calculating wool prices, tithes, harvest yields. The kind of sums that determined whether your estate thrived or your family starved. 80 gallons, Master Smithson, you answer after a pause that earns you a dagger glare. Fractional nod. Correct. Beyond the window, the manor's soundtrack unfolds, hens clucking. A cow's mournful moo, laborers' shouts ricocheting off stone walls. Somewhere a dog barks hysterically at nothing. The scent of baking bread ambushes your empty stomach, making it growled like a chained beast. Tudor life assaulted the senses relentlessly. That fresh country air, bouquet of wood smoke, manure, and humanity's unwashed essence. Even wealthy homes like yours couldn't escape the olfactory onslaught of chamber pots, tallow candles, and generations of sweat soaked into floor rushes. Now, your writing practice, Smithson commands, placing a precious sheet of paper before you. Paper was ludicrously expensive. 1 blot could cost you a week's pocket money. Copy this Cicero passage. Mind your letter forms. You dipped the quill already. Frayed from your enthusiastic penmanship into the inkwell? The nib scratches across the page like a mouse in a cupboard. Concentrate. One smudge equals knuckle rapping. Sunlight slants through the window now, illuminating dust motes dancing above your desk tutorera glitter. Outside, your brothers shriek. During their sanctioned playtime before lessons. At 5 and 3, they're still in the cute nuisance phase, learning basic prayers, letters, and not to pick their noses at table. Your mother glides past the doorway, pausing just long enough to inspect your posture. She's en route to the kitchen, a Tudor woman's battlefield, where she oversees food preservation, medicine making, and the high-stakes drama of servant management. Your sister trails her like a duckling, absorbing skills by osmosis. Which herbs cure colic, how to spot spoiled meat. It's the diplomatic way to chide lazy scullions. The morning drags on, the room growing stuffy. Unlike modern kids who fidget like wind-up toys, Tudor children were drilled in stillness. Slouching, unthinkable, fidgeting. Bertrand says hello. We conclude with religion, Smithson announces, snapping the arithmetic book shut. He flips open. A Latin prayer book, stabbing a finger at a passage. Read. Then we discuss its meaning. Religion wasn't just another subject heat, was the operating system for Tudor minds. Thunder, God's wrath, plague, divine test, a bountiful harvest, favor. Kids absorb this cosmic rulebook with their mother's milk. You recite the passage. Matthew's gospel on honoring parents' voice, wobbling on the tricky Latin declensions. Religious errors were nuclear-level bad. Even kids could face consequences. For heresy in this era of boiling religious tensions, explain its meaning, Smithson demands. It teaches obedience to parents. You answer carefully, as God placed them in authority over us. Good. And what does the commandment promise obedient children? That their days may be long in the land, you parrot from catechism. Smithson's expression almost softens. Remember this well, Master Edward. Obedience to parents, king, and church, this is the foundation of a godly life. For Tudor kids, obedience wasn't just good behavior. It was sacred duty. Questioning authority wasn't rebellion. It was sinning against cosmic order. A bell clangs through the manor. Finally, nearly time for dinner, the midday feast. But your respite is brief. Post-meal means more Latin, archery practice, evening prayers. The bell's metallic clang still reverberates through the manor's stone corridors as you're dismissed from lessons. Your stomach growls like a bear roused from winter sleep, that meager breakfast of bread and ale a distant memory. But before food comes ritual. The midday meal in Tudor England isn't just eating. It's a social chess game where every seating arrangement whispers about status. You enter the great hall where servants scurry like ants at a picnic. The long trestle tables, grown under platters of food far more than your family could possibly eat, yet modest compared to the king's feasts. Your father sits at the high table deep in conversation with a visiting landowner, some dispute about sheep grazing rights. Their voices carry the particular cadence of men pretending this isn't about money. Your place, below the salt, that ornate. Silver salt cellar isn't just seasoning, it's a social barricade dividing the high-status diner's father. Guest important neighbors from everyone else. You, your siblings, lesser servants. Even as the manor's heir, 7, you're still relegated to the kiddie table of Tudor hierarchy. The meal unfolds with military precision. Servants bring roasted capon first to your father, then the guest, then your mother a culinary pecking. Order. You sit frozen until the adults begin eating. Tudor table manners would make modern kids weep. No reaching, ask politely for dishes. No talking with food in your mouth. Choking hazard and uncouth. Wipe your mouth before drinking from the shared cup drop a chicken bone. 5 Hail Marys? Just kidding, but seriously. Don't the food itself is a seasonal symphony, eh? Rich pottage, thick with barley, and the last of winter's salted beef fresh bread still warm from the oven, small. Pigeon pie with apples from the cellar cheese. Aged just long enough to develop character, but not Seninza's. You nibble the pie's flaky crust, careful not to spill crumbs another birching offense. You catch snippets of adult conversation, ... the king's new taxes. That upstart Cromwell, ... monastery lands going cheap, ... This is your political education, not from books, but from overhearing the grievances and ambitions of power. Noble children learned young that every meal was part diplomacy, part intelligence gathering. Across the hall, your little brothers eat under the nursemaid's watchful eye. 5-year-old George stabs his meat with alarming enthusiasm, while 3-year-old Henry Board starts building a bread fort. A sharp glance from father makes the architectural project vanish instantly. The meal ends as abruptly as it began. Father and guest retreat to the solar for wine and real conversation. Read business negotiations. Mother dispatches servants to clear the tables. Those rushes won't sweep themselves. You're granted exactly 17 minutes of rest before afternoon lessons resume. You sneak outside, gulping air that doesn't smell of grease and tallow. The manor courtyard buzzes with post-meal activity. Stable boys mucking out stalls. Blacksmiths hammer ringing against steel kitchen maids plucking tomorrow's chickens for a glorious moment. You're just a kid watching ants march across a sun-warmed stone. Then of course Alice finds you. Master Smithson says you're late for Latin composition. The afternoon stretches ahead like a muddy road after rain, endless, unpleasant, and guaranteed to ruin your shoes. Back in the library, the birch rod waits smugly in its corner. The afternoon sun slants through the library's leaded windows as Master Smithson drones on about Latin participles, a special kind of torture reserved for 7-year-old nobility. Your quill hovers over parchment, the ink threatening to blob disastrously as your attention drifts to the real education happening outside through the warped glass. You glimpse the senior apprentices in the stable yard, strapping lads of 14 practicing Quentin, tilting. Their wooden lances splinter against the rotating dummy with satisfying cracks, the kind of glorious destruction never permitted in the library. One particularly daring Ledoux father's huntsman's son executes a perfect pass that sends the Quentin's sandbag swinging in retaliation, narrowly missing his head. The group erupts in laughter that carries through the thick window panes. Master Edward? Smithson's voice cracks like a whip. The ablative absolute does not conjugate itself. You jerk upright, hastily scribbling port as the correct ending. The birch rod twitches in your peripheral vision like a living thing. Meanwhile, your sister Elizabeth's afternoon couldn't be more different. While you're imprisoned with Cicero, she's in the still room with Mother, learning the real magic of manor life, which mushrooms in the forest will kill a man versus merely make him see dragons how. To distill rosewater that actually smells like roses, not wet dog, the precise moment when a fever warrants leeches versus when it warrants prayer. Their hands move in practiced synchrony. Elizabeth grinding dried lavender with a mortar, while Mother measures out precious saffron threads worth their weight in silver for a digestive tonic. Every motion is a silent lesson in household alchemy, the kind of knowledge that keeps a manor fed, medicated, and profitable through winter. Remember, Mother says, as she seals a jar of comfrey salve, the difference between medicine and poison is the dose. Elizabeth nods solemnly, committing to memory what Oxford would never teach her brother. Back in your prison, Library Smithson has moved on to mathematics. If a merchant buys 20 ells of Flemish wool at 6 pence per L ... double quotes, the word problems never change, just the commodities will today, wine yesterday, herring tomorrow. You're calculating the total cost when a god-awful stench wafts through the window. The tannery. Downwind from the manor. The tanners are processing this week's hides in vats of dog feces and urine, the Tudor equivalent of chemical treatment. The smell hits like a physical blow, making your eyes water. Smithson doesn't even blink. His nose gave up years ago. 20 L's at SIXPENCE ... You mutter, trying to focus through the olfactory assault. Some comes as a leer, fathers. Been drilling merchant maths since you could count fingers. Noble or not. Every Tudor gentleman needed to spot when his steward was skimming profits. As you write the answer, 10 shillings. Obviously, the church bells begin tolling none, the mid-afternoon canonical hour. Smithson checks his water clock. The fancy new mechanical one your father bought Still loses 20 minutes daily in size. We'll resume after supper with rhetoric. Rhetoric, the art of persuasion. You'll need it tomorrow when explaining why your Latin exercises smell suspiciously of apple tart, the one you smuggled from the kitchen during this break. Dashing through the corridor, no running where the adults might see, you nearly collide with the steward carrying this month's accounts. The parchment scroll in his arms unfurls slightly, revealing columns of numbers recording every sheep shorn. Every bushel harvested, the true language of power. You arrive breathless at the buttery knot where they store butter. Confusingly, but where they store barrels, just in time to see the brewer tapping a new cask of small beer. He nods permission, and you scoop a ladleful of the weak. Multi-brew the Tudor version of Gatorade after a grueling day of doing absolutely nothing athletic. The liquid is cool, slightly sour, and infinitely better than the watered-down vinegar. They serve at meals. You're contemplating a second ladle when a shriek from the kitchen yard sends you running, not from alarm, but from opportunity. Cook has discovered the missing tart. The kitchen erupts into chaos, a symphony of clanging pots and cook's colorful curses that would make a sailor blush. You freeze mid-step, the half-a-tan apple tart suddenly weighing like a cannonball in your hand. Cook's meaty hands plant themselves on her ample hips as she scans the kitchen like a general surveying a battlefield. Which thieving magpie's been at my baking? She bellows, waving a wooden spoon like a scepter of justice. The scullions shrank back, except young Tom, the spit boy, whose face splits into a grin when he spots you lurking in the doorway. A tactical retreat is in order. You pivot. Smoothly, nobility has its privileges, including not being publicly accused of pastry theft only to collide with something solid. Going somewhere, master, Edward Alice. Of course. Her raised eyebrow says she knows exactly where that cinnamon scent clinging to your doublet came from. The privy. You improvise with all the conviction of a boy who absolutely did not just commit dessert treason. Alice's lips twitch. The privy's the other direction. Young master. She leans in, voice dropping to a whisper. And if you're going to steal tarts, at least have the sense to wipe the crumbs off your chin. A hasty sleeve across your mouth confirms her accusation. Damnation. Before Alice can deliver the inevitable lecture, something about noble comportment and setting examples, salvation arrives in the form of your father's steward, Master Edward. He intones, "Your father requests your presence in the solar." The solar, that sanctum of adult business where children were only summoned for two reasons, rewards or reprimands. Given the sticky evidence on your fingers, you're betting on the latter. The walk through the manor feels unnaturally long. Past the great hall where servants are already preparing for supper. Past the chapel where the chaplain is polishing the silver crucifix, giving you the side-eyed. Does everyone know about the tart? The narrow spiral staircase to where the family's private chambers cluster like hens around a roost. You pause outside the solar's heavy oak door, rehearsing excuses. The tart jumped into my hand, unlikely. Was conducting a quality inspection for poison. Borderline heresy at St. Distraction's day and tradition. Demands pastry theft, blatant lie, a deep breath. You knock, enter. The solar is all warm wood and filtered sunlight, the air scented with beeswax, and the faint metallic temps of the account book spread across the table. Your father sits framed by the window, his quill scratching across parchment. He doesn't look up immediately, a power move you recognize from years of observing noble politics. You stand perfectly still. The way Master Smithson insists a gentleman should wait for acknowledgement. The silence stretches. Somewhere outside, a stable boy sings off-key while mucking out stalls. Finally, the quill stops. Edward, father. You bow slightly at the waist knot, the full court bow he uses with the king's officials. But the respectful dip reserved for family. He gestures to the stool opposite him. Sit. You perch on the edge, back straight as a pikestaff. The account books lie open, their columns of numbers marching like disciplined soldiers. Your father taps an entry. Can you read this? Relief floods through you. This isn't about the tart. You lean forward, squinting at the cramped script. 20 quarters of wheat delivered to the mill at Michaelmas, yielding 16 sacks of fine flour and 12, of course. Goodness. Points to another notation. You trace the numbers with a finger, careful not to smudge the ink. 8 shillings for ironwork. Paid to Master John the Smith for, the next word stumps you. Plowshares, your father's supplies. The curved blades that turn the soil. What's 8 shillings in pence? 96 pence. You answer automatically, the kind of conversion every man or child learns as soon as they can count. Your father nods, satisfied. Gentleman must know his accounts as well as his prayers. Stewards can steal you blind with pretty numbers if you're not careful. He flips to another page. Now, what's wrong with this entry? You study the figures recording last summer's wool sales. The numbers look correct at first glance, until you spot it. The tally of fleeces sold doesn't match the payment received. Exactly, your father's finger stabs the discrepancy. 2 shillings missing per sack, not enough to notice unless you're checking. That's how old Benton robbed me for 3 years before I caught him. The lesson continues how to spot doctored weights, recognize kickback schemes, calculate interest on loans. This is the real education, far more valuable than Cicero's participles. By the time the chapel bell rings for vespers, your head swims with calculations. As you rise to leave, your father adds casually, and Edward. Yes, father.
Yes.
Next time you steal from cook, take the burnt tart. She won't miss it, and you'll avoid another lecture from Alice about noble dignity. Your mouth falls open. Close your mouth, boy. You're not a carp. He waves you off, already turning back to his papers. Go. Your mother wants you washed before supper. You're halfway to the door when he adds, oh, and Edward. A fresh wave of panic. Yes. Tell cook I'll have word with her about using less cinnamon. Wasteful extravagance. That. The ghost of a smile plays about his lips. You bow again and escape before he can change his mind. The chapel bell's deep tolling for vespers echoes through the manor like a stern reminder of unfinished duties. You dash past the buttery where the brewer is now tapping a fresh cask of the stronger evening ale and nearly trip over a scullion, scrubbing flagstones. The boy's knees are red from hours of kneeling, his hands wrinkled like old apples from lye soap. For a fleeting moment, you wonder if he ever stole tarts. Probably not. Peasant children didn't enjoy the luxury of being mischievous. Your bedchamber offers temporary sanctuary. The evening ritual begins with Alice's arrival, carrying a copper ewer of tepid, water heated just enough to take the well's chill off, but nowhere near the steaming baths depicted in illuminated manuscripts. Arms up, she commands, and you submit. To the brisk washing routine, face first, eyes squeezed shut against the soap. Then hands scrubbed pink with a boar bristle brush that feels like punishment for existing. The linen towel scrapes across your skin like parchment. Your best doublet tonight, Alice informs you while wrestling a comb through your stubborn hair. Your uncle from Kent arrives before supper. Groaning is out of the question. Noble children don't groan unless they want their ears boxed, but your shoulders slump infinitesimally. Uncle Richard is father's younger brother, which means he's required by some unwritten Tudor law to be insufferable. He's bringing his new falconer, Alice continues, ignoring your silent protest. Says the man trained birds for the Duke of Norfolk. This perks you up slightly. Falcons meant hunting, and hunting meant potential escape from Latin lessons. You hold still as Alice fastens a fresh ruff around your neck, the starched linen, digging into your jawline like a miniature torture device. Tudor fashion was basically weaponized fabric. Downstairs, the great hall has transformed since afternoon. Fresh rushes strewn with mint and lavender crunch underfoot. Tapestries depicting biblical scenes, Noah's Ark, complete with suspiciously wolf-like unicorns hang along the walls. Servants scurry with last-minute adjustments, straightening spoons, adjusting candle positions, and most importantly, ensuring Uncle Richard's chair is positioned exactly 2 inches lower than father's at the high table. The hounds sense the impending meal before anyone else. They materialize from shadowy corners, tails thumping against floorboards, noses twitching at the scent of roasting meat. The lead hound, a grizzled veteran named Brutus, plants himself, strategically near your father's chair. Centuries of selective breeding have made Tudor dogs experts in aristocratic manipulation. Trumpets blare, actually just a lone boy with a dented horn, announcing the guest's arrival. Uncle Richard sweeps in, wearing a peacock blue doublet that probably costs more than your tutor's annual salary. At his elbow strides a wiry man with forearms like knotted rope, the famous falconer.
Brother.
Uncle Richard's voice booms with a particular cheer of someone who enjoys being tedious. You look positively monastic in that plain doublet. No wonder your bailiffs cheat you. Father's smile could freeze the Thames in midsummer. How kind of you to visit between bankruptcies. The verbal jousting continues, veiled insults about crop yields, backhanded compliments about sheep herds, the usual aristocratic dance. You stand motionless until acknowledged, which takes approximately 3 eternities. Ah, and this must be young Edward. Uncle Richard finally notices you, gripping your shoulder with a hand that smells of rosewater and something distinctly barnyard adjacent. By the Virgin Thomas, the boy grows like barley in June. Soon you'll have to start paying ransom for him like the Scots do, their tall lads. The falconer saves you from further commentary by presenting a leather-hooded shape perched on his gauntlet. My lords, may I present Nemesis? With a dramatic flourish, he removes the hood to reveal the most magnificent goshawk you've ever seen. Her plumage shimmers like polished steel, golden eyes locking onto yours with terrifying intelligence. That moment you forget Latin, forget tarts, forget everything except the sheer wild glory of the creature. May I? Your hand hovers, uncertain. The falconer nods. Place your glove here, young master. She won't take fingers from nobility, too. Well trained for that. The weight of the bird is astonishing, like holding living lightning. You can feel her grip through the thick leather, the deadly power in those talons that could shred a hair in seconds. Fine balance. The falconer murmurs approvingly as you instinctively adjust your stance to accommodate her movements. The lads. Got the makings of a falconer, Uncle Richard snorts. God forbid. One brother playing accountant is bad enough. The Radcliffe men used to hunt more than just tax exemptions. Supper becomes a masterclass in Tudor dining politics. Father serves uncle. Richard the choicest cuts while pointedly mentioning the guest's outstanding debts the falconer demonstrates. How Nemesis will take meat directly from his lips, a trick that makes mother clutch her pearls. You're allowed to whole cups of watered wine and promptly regret the second when Latin composition looms post-meal between courses, roasted swan, EEL pie, and an alarming number of dishes involving almonds. Uncle Richard holds court with tales of courtly scandals, who's betting whom, who lost how much at cards, and most tantalizingly whispers about the king's growing impatience with the Pope. Mark my words, Uncle Richard declares, waving a chicken leg like a scepter. This great matter of Henry's divorce won't end with polite letters to Rome much longer. Father's eyes flick to you and back a silent warning. Some conversations weren't for children's ears, even noble ones. The evening dissolves into music lutes plucking. Uncle Richard singing off-key ballads about unrequited love, the falconer. Astonishing everyone by juggling walnuts with Nemesis, shrieking approval from her perch. It's nearly midnight when you're finally dismissed to bed, your head swimming with wine, hawks, and half-understood political intrigue. Alice waits in your chamber with a disapproving frown and a posset drink guaranteed to prevent morning headaches. You stink of wine and bird, she scolds, yanking the doublet over your head with unnecessary vigor. And your uncle's sending that infernal hawk to the muse tonight, so stop dreaming about skipping lessons. You collapse onto the straw mattress, still feeling the phantom grip of talons on your wrist. Somewhere beyond the shuttered windows, Nemesis screams into the night, a wild, untamable sound that follows you into dreams of soaring far above Latin verbs and stolen tarts. Dawn arrives with the subtlety of a drunkard stumbling into church-gray light seeping through shutters, roosters screaming their morning obscenities, and Alice yanking your blankets off with the enthusiasm of a tax collector. Up, young master. The hawk waits for no sluggard. You blink crusted eyes, the previous night's wine lingering sour on your tongue. The promised headache throbs behind your left temple, proof that 2 cups of watered wine were apparently 2 cups too many for a 7-year-old's constitution. Uncle Richard's already breaking his fast. Alice continues, merciless as a winter frost. She tosses a clean linen shirt at your head, and he's brought that infernal bird into the hall. That gets you moving. You dress faster than a courtier, avoiding creditors' wool hose, leather shoes, a green doublet that clashes spectacularly with your sleep-deprived pallor. The quick splash of well water on your face does little to banish the fog, but at least you're marginally vertical. The great hall buzzes with unusual morning energy. Richard holds court at the high table, regaling your parents with what sounds like an exaggerated account of last night's revelries. The real attraction, however, perches on a specially erected stand near the fireplace in the Nemesis. Unhooded and preening her slate-gray feathers with fastidious dignity. Ah, the scholar awakens. Uncle Richard booms as you approach. His doublet is somehow even more flamboyant. This morning, crimson silk slashed to reveal canary yellow lining, as if a particularly flamboyant sunset threw up on him. We were just discussing your future, nephew. You freeze mid-step, suddenly very awake. In Tudor England, discussing your future could mean anything from arranged marriages to being packed off to some distant relative's household as a page. Father sips his ale, watching you over the rim of his cup with that infuriatingly unreadable expression, nobles perfect in infancy. Your uncle believes you'd benefit from time at court. Your stomach plummets like a stone down a well. Court meant London. London meant the Tower. The Tower meant, well, nothing good ever came from the Tower unless you were the one holding the keys. Uncle Richard misinterprets your silence. Don't look so terrified, boy. The Duke of Suffolk's household is no dungeon. You'd learn riding, swordsmanship, proper manners, how to empty a wine flask without spilling. Mother murmurs into her cup. And most importantly, Uncle Richard continues, ignoring her, you'd make connections. Friends who'll be earls. And bishops when you're inheriting this drafty pile. The falconer chooses this moment to approach with Nemesis on his glove. She's eager to hunt, my lords. With your permission? Permission granted, the party moves outdoors. A welcome reprieve. From the suddenly stifling hall. The morning air smells of damp grass and wood smoke. A kind of crisp autumn day that makes blood sing and hawks fly true. Nemesis baits flaps violently. At the sight of the lure leather dummy stuffed with pigeon wings, the falconer murmurs, soothing nonsense as he slips off her jesses. For a heartbeat, the world holds its breath then with a powerful thrust of wings. She's airborne. You've seen chickens fly. You've seen swallows dart. But this is something else entirely. Nemesis climbs in spirals, each stroke of her wings propelling her higher until she's a speck against the low clouds. Now watch, the falconer says, swinging the lure on its cord. Nemesis folds her wings and drops like a thunderbolt. The strike is too fast to follow one instant. The lure is spinning merrily. The next, it's clutched in razor talons, with an impact that sends dust devils swirling across the training yard. Your jaw hangs open. Even Uncle Richard looks impressed. The young master like to try? The falconer asks, offering the gauntlet. What follows is the most exhilarating hour of your 7-year existence. Under the falconer's guidance, you learn the proper way to offer your fist as a perched thumb tucked securely under. Like holding an egg without crushing it. Experience the heart-stopping moment when a hunting hawk chooses to return to you. Nemesis graciously ignores your trembling arm, nearly lose an eyebrow to her wings during an over-enthusiastic landing by midday. You're flushed with success, your earlier dread of court forgotten. That is, until Father clears his throat. Edward. A word. He leads you to the herb garden mother's domain, and therefore private. The scent of thyme and rosemary hangs heavy in the air, undercut by the sharper tang of wormwood. Your uncle means well, Father begins, plucking a sprig of lavender, but Suffolk's household is no place for you yet. Crushes the purple buds between his fingers, releasing their scent. The king's difficulties with the Pope have made court unpredictable. You nod solemnly, though half your attention is still skyward, tracking Nemesis's circling form. Father follows your gaze. You have a talent with the hawk. It's not me, really. She's just magnificent. Fearsome? Everything a nobleman should be. He smiles faintly. Precisely why kings and emperors have prized falconry since ancient times. A hawk reminds us that true power requires both precision and patience. The lesson isn't lost on you. Even as Nemesis soars, she's tethered to. The falconers will buy centuries of selective breeding and training. Much like how nobility must balance freedom with duty, will I still learn falconry? You ask, unable to keep the longing from your voice. Father's expression softens. Of course. But first, he produces a familiar-looking parchment from his sleeve. Your unfinished Latin composition from yesterday. Master Smithson insists you conjugate every irregular verb in this text before supper, including the deponent ones. Groan escapes before you can stop it. Think of it as training, Father says, straight-faced. Hawks don't learn to hunt in a day either, as you trudge back to ward. The library, already dreading the birch rod's reunion with your knuckles. Nemesis screams overhead a wild, defiant cry that seems to say, even the most magnificent creatures have their duties. The library's stale air hangs heavy with the scent of parchment and ink as you slump over your Latin exercises. The morning's exhilaration fading faster than sunlight in November. Master Smithson's quill scratches relentlessly across his own. Parchment probably drafting your next punishment assignment with malicious glee. Outside, the muffled shouts of stable boys and the distant thwack of arrows hitting straw targets taunt you. Even your brothers are outdoors 5-year-old George, proudly demonstrating his newly mastered bow stance to the arms master, while Henry toddles after chickens with all the strategic brilliance of a concussed badger. Focus, Master Edward. Smithson doesn't even look up from his writing. The passive periphrastic does not conjugate itself. You grit your teeth and force your eyes back to the text. Amo, Amos, Amot. The letters blur together like tadpoles in a pond, somewhere beyond the manor walls. Nemesis screams a sound that makes your fingers twitch with the memory of her weight on your glove. The afternoon drags on in a haze of irregular verbs that change stems like nobles change alliances deponent. Verbs that passive-aggressively refuse to follow rules, the birch rod's ominous shadow stretching longer across the floor when the chapel bell finally rings for none. You nearly weep with relief. Smithson dismisses you with a curt nod. In the ominous promise of reviewing your progress after supper, Tudor speak for prepare for humiliation. You bolt before he can change his mind, bursting into the courtyard like a cork from a cider. Jug, the falconer's gone probably off teaching Nemesis to hunt actual prey instead of leather lures. But a different surprise awaits. Elizabeth sits primly on a stone, bench near the herb garden, her lap full of embroidery. At 12, she's already acquired that unsettling poise. Noble women cultivate back, straight as a pikestaff. Hands moving with methodical precision, face giving nothing away. Shouldn't you be conjugating verbs? She asks without looking up. The needle flashes in the sunlight, stitching some monstrosity of flowers and Latin mottos onto a pillowcase. You flop onto the bench beside her, heedless of wrinkles in your doublet. Shouldn't you be, I don't know, spinning wool or something? Elizabeth's lips twitch. I finished that before Sext. This is for Mother's Name Day. She holds up the embroidery, a surprisingly competent rendering of the Radcliffe. Crest with virtue's vera nobilitas looping around it in gold thread. Virtue is true nobility. You translate automatically, then frown. Since when do you know Latin? Since Mother hired Master Harlow to tutor me while you're at Oxford. She says it casually, but the glint in her eye is pure triumph. The revelation hits like a well-aimed trencher to the head. Girls weren't supposed to learn Latin, at least not beyond basic prayers. Proper young ladies studied French music, and enough needlework to upholster a cathedral. Elizabeth reads your astonishment and smirks. Father says educated women make better wives for ambitious men, especially now the king's breaking with Rome. She lowers her voice conspiratorially. They say Queen Anne speaks 5 languages and argues theology with bishops. This is treasonous talk, the kind that could get people not named Radcliffe hanged if overheard. You glance around instinctively, but the only witnesses are a pair of kitchen maids giggling near the well. Anyway, Elizabeth continues, louder now. I'm to learn enough Latin to manage household accounts and read devotional texts. Nothing that would tax your precious masculine pride. The needle stabs the fabric with unnecessary force. You stare at your sister, really stare for, perhaps. The first time in years. When did she stop being the annoying toddler who stole your wooden soldiers and become this person with opinions and secret educations? Before you can formulate a response, thunder rumbles in the distance. Not actual thunder, the deep, rhythmic thud of approaching horses. Lots of them. Elizabeth's embroidery slides forgotten to the ground as you both scramble toward the gate. The watchman's already blowing his horn 3 short blasts, signaling. Visitors of importance? Through the dust clouds come riders in the king's livery, their horses lathered from hard riding. At their head rides a man whose beard is more salt than pepper, his face weathered from years outdoors. The royal seal glints at his throat. Sir Thomas Radcliffe, he calls, reining in before the gatehouse. By order of His Majesty King Henry VIII. Father emerges from the stable yard, wiping blacksmith's soot from his hands with deliberate calm. Well met, Sir William. What brings the king's courier to our humble manor? The courier dismounts with a grunt, handing over a sealed parchment. Writs for the shire's gentry. All able-bodied men are to provide arms and men according to their station. He lowers his voice. Trouble in the north. A hush falls over the courtyard. Trouble could mean anything from Scottish raiders to rebellious lords. But one thing's certain when the king called, nobles answered. Or else father breaks the seal with his thumb, scanning the contents rapidly. His face gives nothing away, but you notice his grip tightens slightly on the parchment. Tell His Majesty the Radcliffes stand ready, he says at last. My brother and I will muster 20 men-at-arms and 30 archers by fortnight's end. The courier nods, already turning back to his horse. See that you do? The Duke of Norfolk marches north within the week. As quickly as they came, the king's men vanish in another thunder of hooves, leaving the manor buzzing like a kicked beehive. Servants scatter to carry news. Uncle Richard starts bellowing orders about armor inspections. Even little George puffs out his chest and declares heel. Smite the Scots good and proper. Only Elizabeth remains still, her earlier defiance replaced by something quieter. She retrieves her fallen embroidery, brushing dirt from the half-finished motto. Virtues Vera, no bi, litas. You suddenly realize if father and uncle ride to war, there's no guarantee they'll return, and that changes everything. The manor erupts into controlled chaos, a symphony of clanging metal, shouted orders, and the occasional colorful oath as stable boys struggle with temperamental war horses. You stand frozen near the gatehouse, the courier's words echoing in. Your skull like church bells, tolling doom. Trouble in the north. Norfolk marches within the week. Father's hand on your shoulder startles you. Edward with me. He leads you past the commotion, past Uncle Richard bellowing at the armorer about lance repairs. Past the falconer hurriedly packing his gear, apparently Nemesis doesn't wait for wars. Past mother standing stone-faced as steward's inventory. The winter stores. The solar door closes behind you with ominous finality. Sunlight slants through the leaded windows, striping the account books and family seals spread across the oak table. Father moves to the iron-bound chest in the corner, the one that holds the Radcliffe Charter, and more importantly, the other documents. Your mother knows most of this, he says, working the lock with a key from his purse. But it's time you understood our position. The chest opens with a groan of protesting hinges. Inside, beneath layers of wax-sealed parchments, lies something. Unexpected, a sword. Not some ceremonial bauble, but a proper arming sword with a worn hilt and blade that gleams despite its age. Father lifts it reverently. This belonged to my grandfather. He carried it at Bosworth Field when the Tudors took the crown. His thumb traces a notch near the crossguard. This mark, that's where he parried a Yorkist blade meant for Henry's back. The weight of history presses down on you. That single nick represents everything loyalty rewarded with lands, service repaid with privilege. And now the sword's being unsheathed again. 2 generations later, father replaces the weapon and withdraws a ledger bound in fading red leather. Our accounts, since my grandfather's day, every acre, every tenant, every debt owed and owing. Flips to a page marked with a silk ribbon. This is your inheritance, Edward. Not just land, but responsibility. The numbers swim before your eyes, column after column, recording harvest yields, wool sales, mill revenues. But one entry stands out. Lent to His Majesty, 20 pounds sterling, anno 1523. The king owes us. The words escape before you can stop them. Father's mouth quirks. Never say that where others might hear. But yes, Henry borrowed heavily for his French campaigns. He turns another page. Here the marriage settlement for your sister. 500 acres of good pasture to her husband's family upon her wedding. Your stomach clenches. You'd known Elizabeth's marriage was political, but seeing the cold numbers makes it real in a new way. War changes things, father continues, voice low. If I don't return, father, if he insists, your uncle becomes your guardian until you're of age, but the true responsibility falls to you. His finger taps another entry. The Radcliffes hold these lands by the king's pleasure. Duty is threefold. Keep the peace, render justice, and provide men-at-arms when called. Outside, the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer underscores his words like some grim metronome. You'll continue at Oxford as planned, father says, closing the ledger. But Master Harlow will add lessons in estate management to your studies. And you're to write your mother weekly in Latin, so Smithson can't complain you're neglecting. The unspoken message is clear. You must grow up faster than expected. A knock interrupts. Mother enters without waiting, highly unusual, her face pale but composed. Richard's quarreling with the cook about provisioning the men. The priest is demanding to know if we're taking the chapel silver. Father sighs. Tell Father Clement his candlesticks are safe. As for Richard, he shares a look with Mother. That speaks volumes about brothers and their idiocies. You're dismissed with instructions to check on the armory inventory. The courtyard is even more frenzied. Now servants rolling barrels of salt pork toward the carts, grooms fitting horses with protective padding. The Fletcher testing arrow shafts by bending them near his ear. In the armory's smoky gloom, you find George proudly polishing a dagger twice his size while the armsmaster supervises. I'm to be your squire when you're a knight, your brother announces, nearly braining himself with the oversized weapon. The armsmaster, a grizzled veteran missing 2 fingers and most of his front teeth, chuckles. Aye, and you'll start by learning which end goes in the enemy, young master. Help tally the inventory, running your fingers over. 6 serviceable swords, including the rusted one that definitely won't just sharpen out. 3 crossbows in various states of disrepair. Dented salad helmet that makes you look like a mushroom, exactly 1 pair of proper plate gauntlets. Claimed immediately by Uncle Richard by Vespers, the manor's transformed into a military camp. Tents sprout in the home pasture where the sheep usually graze. The Brewster's daughter circulates with ale for the newly arrived men-at-arms, local farmers and craftsmen, answering their feudal obligation. Supper is a raucous affair in the great hall. The high table crowded with Father and Uncle Richard, debating troop formations, the armsmaster telling increasingly improbable war stories, Mother, maintaining a veneer of normalcy while discreetly directing servants to pack medical supplésseur. Halfway through a venison pie, when Elizabeth appears at your elbow, come, she whispers. She leads you to the chapel's side door, where the stained glass casts jewel-toned shadows on the stone floor. Father Clement is conspicuously absent, probably off safeguarding his precious candlesticks. From her sleeve, Elizabeth produces a small velvet pouch. I had the goldsmith make this. Inside rests a signet ring, the Radcliffe crest carved into bloodstone. It's slightly too large for your fingers, the metal still bright from the forge. Father was supposed to give you this at 14, Elizabeth says, but if he's going to war, ... Her voice wavers for the first time all day. You slip the ring on too. Your middle finger, the weight foreign, but somehow right? Thank you. Elizabeth nods briskly. All business again. Don't lose it. And for heaven's sake, practice your seal. The last thing we need is you embarrassing the family with a smudged wax impression. The chapel door creaks open, revealing Mother silhouetted against torchlight. She says nothing about the ring just. Gathers you both into an embrace that smells of lavender and the faintest hint of tears. Outside, the stars burn cold and bright over a manor preparing for war. Somewhere beyond the northern hills, the king's army gathers. And you, not yet 8, years old, clinch your new signet ring like a talisman against the coming storm. Dawn arrives not with birdsong, but with the metallic clatter of armored men assembling in the courtyard. You dress hastily, no time for Alice's usual morning scrutiny, and nearly trip down the spiral stairs in your haste. The great hall buzzes with last-minute preparations, servants stuffing journey bread into saddlebags, grooms tightening girths on restless destriers, the chaplain murmuring blessings over those who will ride north. Father stands at the center of it all, transformed overnight into some stranger from an illuminated manuscript. His polished cuirass gleams like frozen moonlight, the Radcliffe crest picked out in crimson enamel across the breastplate. The sight steals your breath. This isn't just your father anymore. This is Sir Thomas Radcliffe, Knight of the Realm, answering his king's call. Edward. He beckons you forward with a gauntlet hand. You remember your duties? The list tumbles out automatically. Continue studies with Master Smithson. Write Mother weekly in Latin. Review estate accounts with Steward Harding every good. Father cuts you off with a nod, then surprises everyone by dropping to one knee, bringing himself eye level with you. The gesture sends murmurs through the assembled household noblemen. Didn't kneel to children. He removes his signet ring, the real one, not your practice piece, and presses it into your palm. The gold is warm from his skin, the bloodstone, intaglio, worn smooth by generations of Radcliffe hands. This goes to Richard if I fall. Until then, you'll need it for the harvest contracts. The weight of the thing terrifies you. That ring seals everything from land deals to death warrants. You curl your fingers around it, feeling the crest bite into your palm. Uncle Richard chooses this moment to clank over, resplendent in blue enameled armor that makes him look like a particularly belligerent teapot. Christ's wounds, Thomas. Don't frighten the boy. We'll be back before the first snows, God willing. God and the Scots willing, Father mutters, rising with a creak of leather strapping. He turns to Mother, standing silent and straight-backed nearby. Their farewell is a single pressed hand and exchanged glance that speaks volumes, the quiet language of long-married nobility. Then comes the moment you've been dreading. Father's gauntlets make his grip awkward as he pulls you into an embrace. The cold metal of his pauldron pressing against your cheek. When he speaks, his voice is low enough that only you can hear. A Radcliffe's strength lies not in his sword arm, but here. He taps your temple, and here, your chest. Then he's mounting. His charger, the great beast, sidestepping impatiently. The household assembles along the drive servants, tenants, even the kitchen scullions, as Father raises his visor for final commands. Edward holds my authority until my return, he announces, voice carrying across the silent courtyard. Grievances and contracts shall pass through him and my lady wife. It's a calculated risk, declaring a 7-year-old acting lord, but the alternative, leaving Uncle Richard in charge, would be worse. You stand straighter, willing your knees not to shake. The priest steps forward with holy water, sprinkling the riders and their steeds. In Nomen Perez, that startles the pigeons from the dovecote thereof. Father and Uncle Richard at the head, 20 men-at-arms behind them, and a train of pack horses carrying everything from spare lances to the Radcliffe banner, 3 red martlets on a gold field, proudly frayed at the edges from wind and weather. You watch until the last glint of armor vanishes beyond the manor gates, till the thunder of hoofs fades into the ordinary sounds of a September morning geese honking. A hammer ringing in the smithy, the first apples thudding to earth, and the orchard silence falls. The household looks to you. You swallow hard and turn to the steward. Master Harding, the barley harvest begins today, does it not? The steward blinks, then bows. Aye, my lord. The fields near Mill Creek are ready, and let's not keep the reapers waiting. The morning passes in a blur of unfamiliar responsibilities. Settling a dispute between 2 tenant farmers over a boundary ditch, you compromise by splitting the difference. Approaching the brewer's request for extra grain? Granted. But only if he supplies the harvest workers with small beer enduring master. Smithson's pointed remarks about neglected Latin studies ignored. With practiced nobility by midday, you're exhausted in ways Latin lessons never achieved. Your hand aches from sealing documents, the signet ring heavier than it looks. Mother watches from the solar window, her face unreadable. It's Elizabeth who finds you slumped at the high table, picking listlessly at cold meat pie. You're doing it wrong, she announces, plopping down beside you. Doing what wrong? Being Lord of the Manor. She steals a slice of pear from your plate. Father never makes decisions before hearing both sides, and he always walks the fields himself after giving orders. Criticism stings, but she's right. You'd been so focused on appearing authoritative that you'd forgotten Father's greatest skill, listening. The afternoon finds you in the barley fields, your fine shoes ruined by mud as you watch the reaper's rhythmic scythe strokes sample the brewer's first batch of harvest ale watered. At Mother's insistence, actually listen to old Goodman Willis complain about his arthritic knees by vespers. Word has spread. The young master's taking his duties serious-like. And the tenants regard you with something approaching respect. That night, you lie awake staring at the canopy, the signet ring resting on your chest like a promise. Somewhere. Northward, Father camps under these same stars, perhaps thinking of home. The thought brings an unexpected lump to your throat. You roll over and reach for the Latin primer Alice left on your bedside table. Father trusted you with his seal. You damn well master irregular verbs by the time he returned. The harvest moon hangs fat and golden over the manor, like a celestial seal of approval, its light painting the courtyard silver. 3 weeks have passed since Father rode north, 3 weeks of you stumbling through lordly duties while master. Smithson plots your academic demise. Tonight, however, belongs to celebration. The last sheaves are in, the granaries bulge with barley, and even the usually dear steward admits it's the best yield in a decade. Torches blaze in iron brackets as tenants and servants crowd the great hall for the harvest feast, a rare night. When social hierarchies blur like ink in rain, you sit at the high table in your least-stained doublet. The signet ring heavy on your thumb, you've grown enough that it no longer slides off. Mother presides at the center, her usual reserve softened by cider and the satisfaction of a successful harvest. Beside her, Elizabeth holds court with a group of village girls, demonstrating embroidery stitches with the gravitas of a general. Explaining battle tactics, the hall erupts in cheers as Cook and her army of scullions parade in with the feast. A whole roasted ox garlanded with autumn greens pies, whose crusts gleam like polished mahogany, a parade of smaller dishes, stewed fruits, roasted roots, cheeses rubbed with herbs. You're halfway through your second helping of blackberry tart, when a commotion at the doors cuts through the revelry. The watchman's voice rises above the noise, rider approaching, and suddenly the hall falls silent as a crypt. Mother's goblet clatters onto the table. Everyone knows what unexpected riders mean in wartime: news or corpses. The messenger who stumbles in is no royal herald, just a mud-spattered village lad from the next parish over. His words come in gasps. "Beg pardon, my lady, but they're saying at the inn, ... The king's army met the rebels at ... where?" Mother's voice could flay skin. "Pontefract, my lady. Maybe Doncaster. The news is all confused, but..." He swallows hard. "They say the northern lords have surrendered without battle." A collective exhale fills the hall. No battle means no casualties. "No casualties means Father's coming home?" George shouts, forgetting all decorum. The messenger bobs his head. "Aye, young master. The pardoned companies are being released. To their lands, some are already on the road south." The celebration that follows makes the harvest feast look like a Lenten fast. Someone drags out hidden casks of strong ale. The minstrel, a traveling fiddler who'd been content with background, plucking launches into a rollicking tune that sets feet tapping. Even Master Smithson unbends enough to accept a cup of spiced wine, though he still glares when you sneak a third honey cake. It's near midnight when you slip away from the noise, drawn to the quiet of the chapel. The stone walls mute the distant laughter, the only light coming from the eternal lamp flickering before the Virgin's statue. You kneel at the familiar prie-dieu, the wood worn smooth by generations of Radcliffe knees. "Gratias tibiago, Domini, ... At!" The Latin flows automatically, but your thoughts are elsewhere. Father's safe. The ring will return to its proper finger. Life will resume its ordered rhythm. "So why does your chest feel so tight?" A rustle of silk announces Elizabeth's arrival. She sinks onto the kneeler beside you. her usual composure softened by cider and exhaustion. For a long moment, you just stare at the altar together, listening to the faint drip of wax from votive candles. "It'll be different," Elizabeth says at last, voice barely above a whisper. When he comes back, you turn to stare at her. "What?"
"Uncle?"
"Richard's groom told me. Men always come back different from war." She plucks at her skirt. Even if they never drew sword, the observation sits between you like a third sibling. You'd been so focused on Father's return that you hadn't considered what might return. The man who'd embraced you in the courtyard might now be someone else, someone hardened by camp life, by the sight of rebellion, by whatever compromises were made to secure that bloodless surrender. Elizabeth rises, smoothing her skirts. "Come. Mother will fret if we're both missing." You follow her out, but your mind lingers on that thought. War changed people, even when it didn't kill them. And you'd changed too in these weeks of playing Lord. The boy who'd wept at his first Latin conjugation was gone, placed by someone who could settle tenant disputes and walk barley. Fields without getting lost. The great hall's revelry has reached the messy stage, some drunken yeoman attempting to dance on a table while his mates roar encouragement. Mother has discreetly withdrawn, leaving the steward to maintain order. Even Master Smithson has vanished, likely to nurse his wine headache in peace. You're debating whether to intervene when a hand claps your shoulder, Uncle, Richard's falconer, swaying slightly but remarkably coherent for the hour. "Fine feast, young master," he slurs. Then, leaning in conspiratorially, "Got something for you." From his pouch comes a small leather hood, the kind used for hunting hawks. "It's made it special," he says, pressing it into your hand. "For when your father brings home that goshawk he promised you." The leather is buttery soft, the stitching precise. You run a thumb over the tiny Radcliffe crest tooled near the brow banda, detail far beyond standard falconry gear.
"Thank you."
You say, genuinely touched. But why? The falconer's grin is gap-toothed and knowing. "Saw how you handled Nemesis. Natural talent, that." He staggers off before you can reply, leaving you clutching the hood like a sacred relic. Later, in the quiet of your chamber, you examine the gift by candlelight. The craftsmanship is exquisite, each stitch tight and even, the leather cured. To perfection, it's the kind of present given not out of obligation, but because someone noticed you. You tuck it carefully into your coffer beside the practiced signet ring. The Latin primer and the half-finished letter to Father, "You'll now never send." Outside, the harvest moon watches impassively as the last revelers stagger home, their shadows stretching long across the frosted grass. Dawn will bring sober reality's letters to compose, tenets to reassure, lessons to resume. But for tonight, you let yourself believe that when Father returns, everything will slot back into place like a well-made puzzle box. October's golden light slants through the library windows, gilding the dust motes that swirl above your Latin exercises. 3 days since the harvest feast, 3 days of waiting for word from the north. Your quill hovers over the parchment, ink threatening to drip as your attention drifts yet again to the window where the road snakes toward the horizon. Master Edward. Smithson's voice cracks like a whip. Ablative absolute will not translate itself. You jerk upright hastily, scribbling the correct ending. The birch rod hasn't touched your knuckles in weeks, not since. Father left, but its presence in the corner remains a silent threat. A commotion outside saves you from further conjugations. Poofs pound on the packed earth of the courtyard, shouts erupt. And suddenly the library door bursts open without so much as a knock, a shocking breach of protocol. Alice stands there, her usual composure shattered. They're back. The Latin primer hits the floor with a muffled thump. You're out the door before Smithson can protest, pelting down the corridor with Alice's shouts fading behind you. "At least put on your good doublet." The courtyard is bedlam. Stable boys swarm over lathered horses. Servants lug saddlebags toward the house. And at the center of it all, Father, he's thinner than you remember. His beard grown wild and streaked with gray that wasn't there 6 weeks ago. His armor is dull with road dust, the Radcliffe crest on his breastplate barely visible beneath layers of grime. But it's his eyes that stop you cold harder somehow. Like flint struck too many times, then he sees you. Something shifts in his face, the hardness cracks just for an instant. And the Father who embraced you in this same courtyard reappears like sunlight through storm clouds. Edward, you're not sure who moves first, but suddenly you're crushed against his breastplate, the metal cold against your cheek despite the autumn sun. He smells of sweat and leather and the peculiar acrid scent of campfires. Did you? Your voice comes out embarrassingly squeaky. Did you bring me a goshawk? Father's laughter rumbles through his chest armor. Christ preserve us. Is that all you care about? But he's already steering you toward the baggage train where Uncle Richard supervises the unloading. Thomas must. We do this now? Uncle Richard grumbles, though he's already signaling a groom. Oh, the boy can see his present after nothing, Father says firmly. Edward held this manor in good order while we were gone. It deserves recognition. The groom approaches with a covered wicker basket. From within comes a sound that makes your pulse leap a high, fierce cry. Father lifts the lid just enough. Two reveal two golden eyes glaring from the shadows. Northern bred, he says proudly, trained by the Earl of Northumberland's own falconer before the rebellion. You're still gaping at your first proper look at the juvenile goshawk when Mother arrives, her measured footsteps belying the brightness in her eyes. She allows Father a decorous kiss on the cheek, about as much affection as noble spouses showed in public. But her fingers linger on his sleeve a heartbeat longer than necessary. Welcome home, husband. The great hall that night is a study in contrasts. Where the harvest feast had been raucous and ale-soaked, this gathering hums with quieter intensity. Father and Uncle Richard hold court at the high table, recounting their abbreviated campaign to an audience of rapt servants and tenants. Never even raised our swords, Uncle Richard boasts, waving a chicken leg for emphasis. The Pilgrims. Surrendered before Norfolk's army got within 20 miles. Pilgrims, you whisper to Elizabeth. She rolls her eyes. That's what the northern rebels call themselves, as if marching against their king were some holy quest. Father's version is less colorful, but more illuminating. The king offered pardons to all but the ringleaders, he says, accepting a cup of spiced wine from Mother. The common men were just frightened peasants, misled by their betters. His gaze flicks to you as he says this, and you understand that unspoken lesson. A lord's first duty is to his people. Even when they are later, after the household has retired and only the night watch remains. Father summons you to the solar. The room looks different with him, and it more substantial somehow, as if his presence anchors the very stones in place. He unpacks his saddlebags methodically, a bundle of letters from Oxford scholars. For your future studies, a silver-chased dagger, too fine for actual use. Clearly a gift, a small, cloth-wrapped parcel that makes his hands linger. Your sister's betrothal contract, he says at last, unfolding the parchment. The Kents have agreed to postpone the wedding until she turns 15. You blink. Elizabeth was supposed to marry next spring. Why? Father rubs his beard, a new habit, you notice, picked up during the campaign, because I saw enough at Pontefract. To know this realm is changing. An alliance with a family too closely tied to the old ways may not serve her well. The implications settle over you like a heavy cloak. Father wasn't just talking about religion, he meant the very fabric of English. Society was unraveling. Monasteries being dissolved, ancient loyalties shifting overnight. And now, northern lords humbled by a king who would brook no opposition, spiritual or otherwise. Will there be war again, you ask, before you can stop yourself? Father considers. This, turning his signet ring now back on its proper finger in the candlelight. Not warlike in my grandfather's day. But the king has broken with Rome, Edward. That changes everything. He leans forward, the candlelight carving deep shadows under his eyes, which is why you'll begin Greek studies next month, and why your sister will continue her Latin. The pieces click into place. Greek meant New Testament in the original, meant engaging with reformist ideas. Latin for Elizabeth meant she could read controversial texts for herself. Father was quietly preparing you both for a world where the old certainties no longer held. Now he says, abruptly changing tone. Shall we see about that hawk? The goshawk is everything you dreamed, fierce, proud, and breathtakingly fast. Father shows you how to offer meat on the glove, how to read her feather positions like a language. He'll teach you patience, he says, as the bird devours a strip of rabbit. remind you that even the fiercest creatures respond to gentle hands. It's only later, curled in bed with the hawk's cries echoing from the mews, that you realize Father never actually said where he got her. The Earl of Northumberland's falconer had trained her. Yes, but how did a rebel lord's prized bird end up in your father's saddlebags? The unanswered question follows you into dreams of northern battlefields and hawks, circling endlessly against a storm-dark sky. Winter arrives with a vengeance, howling down from the northern moors like the ghosts of defeated rebels. The first snow blankets Radcliffe Manor in eerie silence, muffling the usual sounds of courtyard bustle and turning the falcon mews into a frosted jewel box. Nemesis sure, now properly named Goshawk, hates it. She'll settle. Father assures you during your morning training session, his breath puffing white in the frigid air. The hawk baits violently at his approach, her feathers fluffed against the cold. Northern birds aren't meant for southern winters. You stroke her breast feathers carefully, the way the falconer taught you. Should we bring her inside? Father shakes his head. Better she grows accustomed. We'll hunt hares once the snow stops. The mews door creaks open, admitting Elizabeth bundled in so many wool layers she resembles a walking tapestry. Mother says, "You're both to come in before you freeze solid." She eyes Nemesis warily. That thing looks ready to take someone's eye out. She, you correct, has better manners than some people. Elizabeth responds by pelting you with a snowball. The ensuing skirmish leaves you both breathless and snow-crusted, much to Father's amusement. For a fleeting moment, it's as if the Northern Rebellion never happened, as if the world still turns. On its old, predictable axes, reality returns with the midday meal. A royal courier arrives, his horse staggering with exhaustion. The letter he bears carries the king's seal and its address to you. The great hall falls silent as a tomb as you break the wax. The parchment crackles ominously as you read aloud. By order of His Majesty King Henry VIII, Edward Radcliffe, son and heir of Sir Thomas Radcliffe, is commanded to present himself at Oxford upon the Feast of Candlemas. ... Double quotes. Your voice falters. This isn't just a summons, it's an early enrollment. You're to begin at Dartmouth College 3 years sooner than planned. Father takes the letter. His face unreadable as he scans the contents. It seems His Majesty is gathering promising young men to his cause, he says at last. Uncle Richard, visiting for the winter, snorts into his ale. More like he's gathering hostages from families he doesn't quite trust. Richard, Mother warns. But the damage is done. The unspoken truth hangs over the table like sword. Your early departure is no academic honor. It's insurance the king's. Way of ensuring loyal behavior from a family with northern connections. The snow continues falling as afternoon fades into evening, piling in drifts against the manor walls. You sit by the solar window, watching it blanket the world in deceptive purity while inside. Plans whirl like storm winds. Mother orders extra woolens from the seamstress. Father dictates letters to Oxford, contacts Stephen. Elizabeth contributes her prized herbal sachets into your traveling chest to keep the Oxford fleas at bay. Only Nemesis remains oblivious. Mantling over her dinner in the mews, you visit her at dusk, the icy air stinging your lungs. She cocks her head at your approach, golden eyes catching the last light. I'll be back, you promise, though you're not sure she understands, or if you'll be the same person when you return. That night, sleep proves impossible. You wander the manor like a ghost, running your fingers over familiar stones, the nick in the great hall's beam where Father's grandfather tested his sword, the worn step where generations of Radcliffe children have tripped the hidden alcove, where you and Elizabeth once stashed stolen sweets at dawn. You find Father in the chapel, kneeling before the Radcliffe tomb effigies. His prayer book lies open to the office of the dead knot for any recent loss. You realize, but for ancestors who once faced their own trials, he doesn't turn as you approach, but his voice carries clearly in the hushed space. The first Radcliffe at Oxford was my great-uncle William. He went at 12 and returned a priest. A pause. You'll do better. You swallow hard. What if I'm not ready? A father turns, his face lined with shadows and candlelight. No one's ever ready, Edward. Not truly. Rises, dusting imaginary. Lint from his knees. Come, let's hunt that hare before the snow melts. The morning's hunt is more ceremony than sport. Nemesis isn't yet trained enough for serious winter quarry. But as she stretches her wings against the pale sky, as father's laughter rings across the frozen fields, you store the memory away like a talisman against coming storms. When the king calls, you'll answer. But for this one last morning, you're still just a boy in his hawk, with a father's shadow stretching long across the snow. Candlemas dawns brittle and bright, the frost-limbed trees standing sentinel along the Oxford Road. Your breath plumes white as the Radcliffe entourage assembles in the courtyard's 6 mounted men at arms, to pack horses laden with your belongings. And father astride, his charger like some figure from a chivalric romance. Nemesis screams from her perch on the falconer's glove, straining against her jesses, as if she alone understands this isn't an ordinary hunting party. You stroke her breast feathers one last time, committing the feel of warm feathers and racing heartbeat to memory. Keep her flying true, you tell the falconer, who nods solemnly. She'll be waiting when you return, young master. Mother's farewell is all practicality, adjusting your cloak's clasp. Tucking a sealed letter into your purse, murmuring last-minute reminders about changing your linens regularly. Only the tightness of her grip betrays her emotions as she presses a tiny silver pilgrim's badge into your palm. Saint Christopher, protector of travelers. Elizabeth surprises everyone by producing a carefully wrapped package. Don't open it until you're there, she orders, her usual composure fraying at the edges. The lumpy bundle smells suspiciously of lavender and something sharper, likely her latest medicinal concoction. George, ever the opportunist, chooses this moment to declare. He's coming too. I can be your squire, he announces, attempting to heave his 8-year-old frame onto a startled pony. The resulting chaos, George dangling upside down from the stirrup. The pony bucking, Uncle Richard roaring with laughter breaks the tension. Like a well-aimed snowball, then there's nothing left but to mount your own horse. A steady bay gelding, chosen for its calm temperament. You settle into the saddle with all the dignity a 12-year-old can muster. Painfully aware of the household's watching eyes, father nudges his charger forward. Ready? No. Not even slightly. But you nod anyway. The journey unfolds in a blur of frost-rimed landscapes and unfamiliar inns. Each day brings mornings spent rubbing feeling back into frozen fingers, afternoons memorizing, Latin declensions at father's insistent evenings, listening to his low-voiced advice about Oxford politics. By the third day, the flat water meadows of home give way to rolling hills, the road growing muddier with each mile. You're dozing in the saddle when a shout rouses you, one of the outriders pointing ahead. There, the spires. And suddenly it rises before you, Oxford, a vision of towers and bridges wreathed in wood smoke. The Isis River glints steel-gray at its feet, dotted with barges hauling everything from wine to wool. Even from a distance, the city hums with energy, a living thing pulsing with scholars and merchants and all the chaotic glory of Tudor England's intellectual heart. Your horse prances nervously as you approach the north gate, its ears flicking. At the sudden onslaught of city sounds, shouting vendors, clanging church bells, the rhythmic chanting of students drilling Latin in a nearby yard, the gate guards wave father's party through with barely a glance, their attention on a more pressing matter. Some poor scholar being dunked in the horse trough for an unspecified offense. Welcome to university life, father mutters as the spluttering victim is hauled out by his peers. Dartmouth College looms ahead, its limestone walls glowing amber in the late afternoon light. The courtyard teems with students in varying states of disarray, some deep in philosophical debate, others engaged in less scholarly pursuits, like attempting to catapult turnips onto the roof of neighboring Cardinal College, a thin man in scholars. Robes detaches himself from the chaos, his expression suggesting he's smelled something unpleasant. Sir Thomas, and this must be our newest fledgling. His gaze sweeps over you like a butcher assessing livestock. Come along then, the warden expects you. The interview with Warden Chambers is brief and terrifying. The elderly scholar peers at you over steepled fingers as father lists your qualifications, reads Latin fluently. Competent in Greek grammar, skilled at mathematics, can he hold his wine? The warden interrupts. Father blinks. He's 12. Exactly. The warden turns his gimlet gaze on you. What's your opinion on transubstantiation, boy? You freeze. This is a trap the theological debate currently tearing England apart. Answer wrong and risk being labeled papist or heretic. With respect, sir, you say carefully, I believe as Holy Mother Church believes. It's the safest answer, enough to be orthodox, specific enough to show you understand the question. The warden's lips twitch almost approval. See? Heal. Do fine. The parting with Father happens too quickly. One moment he's there, solid and reassuring, adjusting your scholar's gown with uncharacteristic fussiness. The next, he's mounting up, his final words barely audible over the courtyard din. Make us proud. And then he's gone. The Radcliffe colors vanishing into the Oxford streets. You stand frozen, the reality crashing over falconry lessons. Now, no quiet evenings in the solar, no one to nudge you when you slouch at mass. A bony hand clamps onto your shoulder. Right then, young Radcliffe says your tutor a perpetually harried master named Blythe. See if you can tell Aristotle from your arse. He steers you toward a stairwell, the stone steps worn concave by generations of anxious students. Somewhere above, a chorus of voices rises in ragged harmonia, drinking song mixing, Latin puns with impressively creative obscenities. Your new life has begun.